Ethan Cole woke up before the sun every morning. He did not need an alarm. His body simply knew when it was time to rise, the way a tree knows which direction to grow toward the light. He would lace up his boots in the dark, step outside into the cool morning air, and walk the long path that curved behind his property and disappeared into the trees. People in the town of Graywood Falls thought he was a jogger. Some thought he was just a quiet man who liked nature. Nobody thought much about it at all, which was exactly the way Ethan preferred things. He had lived in Graywood Falls for 6 years. He owned a small construction business on the edge of town, employed 12 people, paid his taxes on time, and was never late on a single invoice. He coached a youth soccer team on Saturday mornings, not because anyone asked him to, but because the town needed a coach and nobody else volunteered. He drove a dark blue truck that was 4 years old and had a small scratch on the passenger door that he kept meaning to fix but never did. He was, by every visible measure, an ordinary man. Only Marcus knew the truth. Marcus had known Ethan since they were boys, back when the world was a very different place for both of them. He was Ethan's most trusted friend, and on the rare occasions when they were completely alone, far from any listening ears, Marcus would call him by a different name, Alpha King. Ethan did not like the title. He had never asked for it. It had found him the way most heavy things find a person, not through choice, but through survival. When he was 17 years old, the pack he was born into was destroyed in a single night by a rival faction. His parents were gone. Most of the elders were gone. He was the last one left, with enough strength and enough bloodline to hold the territory together. So he did. He held it. And then he hid it. He built the ordinary life on purpose. Not because he was afraid, but because he understood something that most powerful people never learned. The safest kind of power is the kind nobody knows you have. His sister Luna was the only family he had left in the world. She was 22 years old, studying to become a nurse, and she had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness. Every Sunday morning, she drove 20 minutes from her apartment near the college campus to eat breakfast at Ethan's kitchen table. She always brought something: a small plant she had propagated, a book she thought he would never read but should, a container of food she had made too much of. She never came empty-handed, and she never stayed long enough, because she always had somewhere to be. Ethan looked forward to Sunday mornings more than he would ever admit. He never told her what he was. It was not that he did not trust her. It was that he trusted the world too little, and the world was not kind to the people who stood close to someone like him. The Tuesday that everything began to change started like every other Tuesday. Ethan was closing up the shop just after 7 in the evening when he heard the sound of a car pulling slowly to the side of the road. He stepped outside to find a silver car parked halfway onto the gravel, with its hazard lights blinking. A woman was standing beside it, looking at her phone, with the particular expression of someone whose phone was not helping. He walked over without thinking twice. That was one of the things about Ethan that the people who knew him always noticed. He moved toward problems, not away from them. "Battery or engine?" he asked. She looked up. She had dark eyes and an expression that said she was not easily surprised, though he had come close. "Battery," she said. "The mechanic I called can't get here for 2 hours. I have jumper cables," he said. Her name was Naomi Voss. She was a journalist. She told him while the cables did their work, and she was in Graywood Falls looking into a story. She did not say what the story was, and he did not ask. He had learned a long time ago that asking people about their work was a fast way to make a conversation longer than it needed to be. But she asked about his, and he told her: the construction company, the jobs, the soccer team. She listened in the way that people who are trained to listen do, which was differently from the way most people listened. Most people listened while thinking about what they were going to say next. Naomi Voss listened like she was actually trying to understand. When her car started, she thanked him. He told her it was no trouble. She held his gaze for just a moment longer than was necessary, and then she drove away. He stood on the gravel for a few seconds after her taillights disappeared. Then he went back inside and finished closing up the shop. Marcus was waiting for him at the house. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee he had made himself, which meant whatever he had to say was serious enough that he needed something to do with his hands while he said it. "Victor Crane's people have been crossing the eastern boundary," Marcus said. "3 times this week. They're not hunting, they're looking at something." Ethan sat down across from him. "How many?" 4, same 4 each time. One of them we've seen before. He was with Victor at the territory meeting 2 years ago. Victor Crane was the beta of a rival faction that controlled a large territory, 200 miles to the north. He was ambitious in the way that small people with large egos often were, loudly, recklessly, and without the patience that real power required. Ethan had kept a careful distance from Victor for years, monitoring him without engaging him, which was the correct strategy for dealing with people who wanted to provoke a reaction. "Keep watching," Ethan said. "Don't make contact. Don't let them know we've seen them." Marcus nodded. He finished his coffee, set the cup in the sink, and left. Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time after that. The following weeks moved in two directions at once. On the surface, life in Greywood Falls continued exactly as it always had. Ethan went to work. He coached soccer on Saturday. Luna came for breakfast on Sunday and brought him a small cactus she said was impossible to kill, which she placed on his windowsill with great ceremony. But underneath the surface, something was tightening. Victor's scouts continued crossing the boundary. Marcus reported that they were spending more time near the south end of town, close to the college campus. Ethan adjusted his own routes quietly, moving through areas he did not usually cover, watching without being seen. He was very good at that. Naomi reappeared on a Wednesday afternoon. She came into the hardware store 2 doors down from his shop, and he saw her through the window. He could have stayed where he was. Instead, he walked over. She was looking at a town map posted on the wall near the entrance. She turned when she heard him come in. "The man with the jumper cables," she said. "The journalist with the dead battery," he replied. They ended up walking to the small coffee shop on the corner and talking for almost an hour. She was working on a story about a series of missing persons cases in the region. 3 people over the past 18 months, all connected to the forest area east of town. Local authorities had declared each case unrelated. She did not believe them. Ethan listened carefully and said very little. He already knew more about those disappearances than she did, and the knowledge sat heavily in his chest while she talked. "You seem like someone who knows this town well," she said at one point. "I've been here a while," he said. "Do you ever feel like there's something off about it, like the town is keeping a secret?" He looked at her steadily. "Every town keeps a secret," he said. "That's just how towns work." She smiled at that, and it changed her whole face. He thought about it on the drive home. Luna called him that evening to tell him she had met a new friend, a woman named Claire, who was working at the coffee shop near campus. Claire was friendly and funny and had invited her to a study group. Ethan listened and said that was nice. After he hung up, he sat very still for a moment. He called Marcus. "Find out who Claire is," he said. The answer came back the next morning. Claire was not a student. She had no connection to the campus. She had moved to the area 6 weeks ago, around the same time Victor's scouts first appeared on the boundary. Her name had come up once before in connection with a member of Victor's faction. Ethan did not sleep that night. He pulled Luna closer without her knowing it. He started driving past her apartment building twice a day on his regular routes. He asked Marcus to put 2 people near the campus, just watching, just making sure. He did everything quietly, the way he always did everything. But Victor was not patient. On a Thursday night in late October, Luna did not come home. She had texted Ethan at 6 in the evening, just a regular message, a photo of a soup she had made, asking if he wanted her to save him some. He had replied with a simple yes. That was the last message. At 11:47 at night, Ethan's phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm and deliberate, the way voices are when the person speaking them wants you to know that they feel completely in control. "You have built a very convincing life here," Victor Crane said. "I almost believed you were just a man with a truck and a soccer team. Almost." Ethan said nothing. "Your sister is comfortable. She is not harmed. That is a choice I am making right now, and it is a choice I can unmake. What I want from you is simple. You step back. You dissolve whatever quiet authority you hold over this region. You let my people move freely. And Luna comes home in the morning." Ethan was quiet for 3 full seconds. "I will call you back," he said. He hung up. What happened next was not rage. Ethan had long since made peace with the difference between anger and action. Rage was loud and expensive, and solved almost nothing. What he felt instead was something much colder and much more precise. A complete and total clarity about what needed to happen and in what order. He called Marcus. He called every loyal member of his network within 100 miles. He spoke in short sentences, and people moved. He changed his clothes, put on his boots, and walked into the forest. For the first time in many months, he stopped holding himself back. He let the full weight of who he was come forward. The Alpha King that 6 years of careful ordinary life had kept, carefully folded away. It rose in him quietly, the way a tide rises, and the forest felt different around him as he moved through it. Older, more awake. Marcus met him at the eastern boundary with 4 others. They moved without speaking, without needing to. They had trained for situations like this for years, even when it seemed like those years of training were never going to be necessary. It took them less than 3 hours to find where Luna was being held, a property Victor's faction had been using as a base on the far side of the county line, disguised as a closed warehouse. The approach was careful and methodical. Ethan assessed every exit, every position, every variable, before a single move was made. When Victor's people saw Ethan walk through that door, something changed in the room. It was not the way he looked, it was something older than appearance, something that certain people recognize in certain other people, without being able to name it. One of the men near the back actually took a step backward without realizing he had done it. Victor stood at the far end of the room, trying to project confidence he no longer fully felt. Ethan did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He looked at Victor the way a man looks at something that he has already decided the outcome of, and is simply waiting for the situation to confirm it. "This ends here," Ethan said. "Not because I say so, because you made a mistake in judgment, and now you understand the size of that mistake." Luna was found in a locked room at the back of the building, frightened but completely unhurt. When the door opened and she saw her brother standing there, she pressed her hand flat against her mouth and did not make a sound for a long moment. Then she walked straight to him and held on. He let her. Victor did not escape. He was brought forward, and in the presence of every faction member in that room, his own people included, Ethan stripped him of his rank and issued an exile. No territory, no authority, no place in the world he had tried to claim. It was over before midnight. Ethan drove Luna home himself. She sat in the passenger seat of his old blue truck with the scratch on the door and stared out the window for most of the ride. He did not fill the silence. He understood that she needed it. When they reached his house, she sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where she ate breakfast every Sunday, and he made her tea. Then he sat across from her and told her everything. From the beginning. All of it. She listened without interrupting, which he had not expected. Luna was not usually someone who listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "How long have you been carrying this alone?" "A long time," he said. She looked at him, the way she had looked at him when they were children, back when the world was simpler and the nights were safer. "You should have told me." "I know," he said. "I'm not afraid of you." "I know that too." She reached across the table and put her hand over his. Neither of them said anything else for a while, and the kitchen was warm, and outside, the wind moved through the trees in the way it always had. 3 days later, Naomi Voss came to his shop. She stood in the doorway with her notebook in her hand, and her eyes very steady. She had clearly spent the past 72 hours working things out, piecing together the parts of her story that now fit in a different way than she had expected them to. "I think you know more about the disappearances than you told me," she said. "Yes," he said. She waited. He leaned against the doorframe and looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Come inside. I'll make coffee, and I'll tell you what I can." He did not tell her everything that day, but he told her enough. Enough that the careful wall he had built between himself and the rest of the world developed a small, deliberate opening. The kind of opening that is not a weakness, but a choice. She did not run. She asked questions, the way she always did, and she listened to the answers the way only she could. That Friday morning, Ethan was at the tree line again before sunrise. The sky was that particular shade of deep blue that exists only in the minutes before the light arrives, and the air was cold and clean and completely still. He heard footsteps behind him. He did not turn around, because he already knew who it was. Naomi stopped beside him and looked out at the dark edge of the forest. She did not say anything. She simply stood there with him, in the quiet, in the early morning, while the world slowly began to wake. Ethan Cole was still the Alpha King. He was still hidden from most of the world, still living in his modest house with the cactus on the windowsill and the scratch on the truck door. He still coached soccer on Saturdays and ate breakfast with his sister on Sundays. But for the first time in 6 years, he was not hiding from himself, and that made all the difference.